Hey everybody, sorry about that. I thought I had unmuted the mic, and I didn't. So you had a few seconds of just me babbling into the silence. It's another episode of Uncanny Media, the show. Despite that rocky start, I think the rest of it is going to go much better. Don't mind me. Don't mind me. It wouldn't be live, recorded live, the way I do it if I didn't have some kind of goofy something happen every so often, right? And while you're not listening to it live, it's been pre-recorded by the time you hear it. I don't do any edits, I don't do any changes, I don't screw with anything after it's recorded. You hear it exactly the way that I've done it when I do it. You know what I mean? I record it all in one take. I don't go back and fix anything. And then I ship it to Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, etc. And you get to hear it. So, and I think that's the best way to do it, because it feels more natural to me to do it kind of in the moment, off the cuff, so to speak, and just without a bunch of flashy things going on. Too many people will take a broadcast, or they'll take a podcast, or they'll take any kind of cast, really, and they'll play around with it after the fact. They'll polish it up. They'll shine it up a little bit, and they'll make it sound different than when they initially recorded it. They'll do jump cuts. The cats in the background, you wouldn't be able to hear them. You can hear them now, and you wouldn't be able to hear them otherwise. So you don't get to hear the real life. You don't get to hear the action as it happens. You hear it as they want to present it, but not as it happens. And here we do things in the moment. This is what's going on in my house right now. The cats are running around being crazy. They're growling at each other, because that's what they do. They're alright. They're not hurting each other. They're not fighting viciously. They're just being cats. It's been crazy weather again still. We had that boomerang once again of warm, nice weather, followed by a day of snow. Followed by warm, nice weather, followed by a day of snow. It's just been... My daughter was talking to me about spring, about when spring is really supposed to start. Not necessarily like the date of it, but when you're supposed to get that spring weather. And I said, in Ohio, we don't really have that. Frequently, we don't even have spring at all. We go straight from winter into some indescribable season of storms and various calamity, and then we go straight into summer. And she was like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." That's what happens. Because she's never really... She's 11 years old now, and she's starting to notice things cerebrally. Cerebrally is a nice word. For the first time, she's more thoughtful about things. She's thinking things through, and it's not like she wasn't a thoughtful child beforehand, but this is the first time where has certain neurons firing and certain observations, and she's just starting to realize that Ohio is not the most stable of seasonal states. I don't know if it's like that in the rest of the Midwest. I mean, Ohio is at the very easternmost part of the Midwest. Some people don't even consider it the Midwest at all, but I do, because it's right on that cusp. It's not part of the eastern seaboard, so to speak, because Pennsylvania is still considered on the eastern seaboard, even if it isn't right directly on the Atlantic Ocean, because it's one of the colonies, right? All of the 13 colonies are considered to be on the east coast, and Ohio is just a little bit left of that, or west of that, rather. And it's more the beginning of the Midwest. At least that's what I would consider. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Does it matter? Does anybody care? I don't know. moving on. Let's get into the meat of the topic. We've got a few things to talk about. The big one I want to start with. You'll notice the title of the episode. And if you're savvy to what that is, then you'll also know, hey, I know exactly what you're referencing. I'm eager to hear this. And you'd probably be right. We're going to talk about a court case that just wrapped up not too long ago. And it is a court case involving a man by the name of Joseph Edgar Foreman. Now, you may not know that name. That name might not get you like, oh, who is that? Is that, oh, that's that famous so-and-so. They did that thing, and you might not know about that. But you probably, if you were around in the early 2000s listening to the radio with MTV and all that other good stuff, you might be aware of an artist by the name of Afroman. Afroman is the stage name of Joseph Edgar Foreman, okay? And we're going to call him Afroman from here on out, because there's no reason to reference his main name, because he's more famous under the stage name. And he wrote a little song in 2001. It was his fourth album, believe it or not, right? It was his fourth album. He hadn't made it all that big until this album. One of the songs on the album was called Because I Got High. And now if you were kind of wondering where is this going, now you're kind of thinking, okay, I know who you're talking about. I know this person. Not maybe personally, but you know this person. He's been doing music ever since. I mean, he's not super prolific, but he does... That's his living. That's how he makes money. That's how he supports himself off of his music career. And he does pretty well. Seems like. By all intents. Like, I've seen his home. I've never been there, and I haven't watched a show specifically about it. And you're going to probably wonder, wait a second, how have you seen his home then? We're going to get to that real quick here. And if you've been following along with the case, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? The people who don't know, I'm going to educate you. Afroman lives in Ohio, believe it or not. He lives in Adams County, Ohio. And it's a little tiny town. He appreciates the quiet. He's there because he doesn't want to be famous to the level where, you know, he's always in the public eye. He wants some peace and quiet for his family, so he lives in Adams County, Ohio. And in 2022, there was a raid on his home. He was not there. He was out on tour in Chicago at the time. He was not at home. But in 2022, the Adams County Sheriff's Department raided his home based on an anonymous complaint, an anonymous tip that led to a warrant, and the warrant officially said that they were looking for narcotics and evidence of kidnapping. Now, if you know Afroman, you know that a lot of his songs are about smoking weed, smoking marijuana, and getting high. But when they say narcotics, they don't just mean he had a little bit to smoke on. They mean that he was apparently dealing vast amounts, like hundreds of pounds of marijuana. Supposedly, this was according to the warrant. They were looking for this in his home, and supposedly the tip said that he had mountains of it that he was selling illegally. Okay. And it also alleged under the kidnapping that in his basement, this is a key point, in his basement, okay, he kept women for vast lengths of time in deplorable conditions, wouldn't let them out of the house, made them go to the bathroom in plastic buckets and things like that. Now, this all sounds pretty horrific, and you're like, oh, this Afroman really did that? No. He did not do any of that. And one of the reasons why he did not do that, not because he's not a bad person, all right, for one. He's not like the type to kidnap people and keep them in his basement. For another, he does not have a basement. Listen to that again. He does not have a basement because his home is not, it's built on a single foundation, and access underneath the house to do like pipes and wires and whatnot, there's a crawl space. There's no basement. There's no dugout area underneath his home. There's no bunkers. There's no basements. There's no cellars. He doesn't have any of that. It doesn't exist under his house. But so in 2022, they raided his house based on this anonymous tip and this warrant that they got. And they found nothing. They didn't find vast amounts of marijuana. They found a couple of products and things, but obviously it's just a small amount for personal use. It's nowhere near the amount you would need for a drug trafficking ring. They found no kidnapping victims. They found no evidence of kidnapping victims. They found no evidence of trafficking. They found nothing of that nature. He had cameras inside of his house because he was concerned with security, not because he ever thought he was going to get raided by the police, but because, if you're a famous person and you have some amount of money, then you're worried about security. So he had cameras all through his house. The cameras caught everything. They saw the police come in. They busted down a gate at the beginning of his driveway. They broke the lock to get into it. Then they kicked down his door to get into the home. And this is all on the camera footage. When they were in there looking for everything, at some point during the search, they noticed the cameras. And so they started disconnecting them so they couldn't be seen searching. They confiscated a certain amount of money. And I believe, I don't have the exact figure right here, but it was 5,000 and some change that they found money in his various parts of his home. It's not drug trafficking money. It's not, there's not a lot to worry about, but they took it. And afterwards, they returned it minus about $400. And their claim was that they had miscounted it when they first entered it into evidence, so there really wasn't an extra $400 missing. But that's pretty suspicious. Because, again, they found nothing. There was nothing else in his house. And they didn't end up charging him with anything, because there was nothing, right? So while they're doing that, he gets a call from concerned neighbors that say, hey, the police are raiding your house. And he's like, oh, man. So when he gets home, the door's still off. The gate's still busted. His house is a mess. And he finds out what they were doing. They don't charge him, of course. But he's kind of miffed about the whole thing. He's like, hey, you broke my door. You busted my gate. You went through all my stuff. You stole my money. What are you going to do about this? You need to come, can you fix this stuff? Can you fix my door? Can you? And they said no. They refused to do anything about their failed raid. So, what does Afroman do? He's a musician. He is an artist. He has camera footage of everything that they did. Even though they disconnected the cameras at some point, he's got footage of everything they did up to that point. So what does he do? They won't give him his money. They won't fix his things. He's going to make them famous. As famous as he is. So he writes an album. He writes an album with multiple songs dedicated to the events that transpired and naming names of the various police officers and members of the sheriff's office that raided his house. He did research. He found that some of them had prior criminal records of their own, and they were fired from their own precincts and then were rehired in this area. He found all kinds of things, and he put that into his songs. And he made music videos of the footage of the raid put to the music. So people saw the officers' faces, they knew their names, they knew what happened. And so he was like, hey, you know what? If I can't get my money back from you guys and get satisfaction, I'm going to make you famous. And then people will listen to my songs and buy my songs, and I'll get paid off of your ignorance. And fast forward to 2003, the sheriff's office, members of the sheriff's office, sued him. They sued him for defamation and emotional distress because they were now famous for being ignorant, basically, right? In 2003, they leveled the lawsuit. The trial for that, because these things are slow, the evidence has to be gathered, and then the procedures followed. All of this, it took until a few days ago, sometime last week, for everything to come to trial. And the jury gets to watch the music videos that he made. They gets to hear his statement. Afroman showed up in a custom-made suit decorated with American flags. And one of his only witness that he wanted called for the defense other than himself was one of the ex-wives of one of the sheriff's deputies that raided his house to testify on his behalf. Which is a funny story because in one of the songs, because he's a rapper and he says controversial things sometimes, and he was trying to be like insulting towards the officers because they raided his house, he made the claims that he slept with an officer's wife in a dramatic fashion. He didn't really, but it's one of those, there goes the cat. She doesn't like that. But so when they asked the officer, he went on the stand and they asked him. They asked him, obviously it's absurd that something like that would occur. Obviously your wife wasn't sleeping with Afroman. And his response was, well, I don't know. You'd have to ask her, because now everything is whatever. And he just put his whole... Like, are you serious? You're just going to put it out there that there's a possibility that Afroman actually did sleep with your wife. And it didn't look good for him. And I don't think it's the same as the ex-wife that was called to the stand separately, but apparently, because one of the officers claimed, it broke up my marriage and everything, and the woman testified that said, no, I saw the posts, I saw the videos, I saw whatever, and it didn't have anything to do with our marriage breaking up. We were having our own issues, and all that was separate. So the end of this story is that he won. He successfully defended against the lawsuit, and their lawsuit was tossed out. So, to recap, the Adams County Sheriff's Department raided his house in 2022 on unsubstantiated charges, find nothing, cause damage, don't charge him with anything because they found nothing. He asks them to repair the damage and to return the money that's missing. They refuse. So he makes songs about them, ridiculing them and talking about this is what they did to my house with music videos based on the camera footage. They sue him for defamation, and they lose. It's a crazy story. And when you go and you listen to the songs, you're like, okay, this is a whole new layer. You could almost say it was a layer cake, so to speak, if you're in the know about everything. Now, normally I'm not really into celebrity gossip and celebrity news and all this other kind of stuff. It's not a big deal for me. And I'm not a big Afroman fan. I don't have his Because I Got High 2001 hit in my Spotify library. I don't have a downloaded copy. I just thought it was a goofy song, whatever. I was never a big marijuana user myself. I have in the past. I'm not going to say I haven't. But it hasn't been all that central to my life. But this story is fascinating to me. And it's fascinating because now it sets precedent. And I'm big on precedent. I follow law cases that set precedent because that rewrites law. It establishes boundaries. It setting a precedent means that other cases in similar circumstances can now cite this one in their own defense. And that's huge. That is a big deal if you're in the scope of law. If you work in law, not necessarily in law enforcement, but in as a lawyer or as, an attorney of some fashion, the first thing you do when you get a case that's kind of complicated is you look to see if there have been other cases like it in the past, to see what the verdict was and to see what the judge said about it. Because that can impact immediately whether the case even has to continue or whether it gets thrown out or whether, it's a huge deal. And what this does, this sets a precedent that basically anybody, if your home gets raided by the police and you don't get charged with a crime because they don't find anything or because you didn't do anything or for whatever reason you don't get charged, but they cause any sort of damage or any whatever to the premises or to you or anything, you are now legally able to speak out and to talk badly about the people who did this to you without reprisal. Not that you can say some horrible, vile things, but that you can be like, yeah, they came into my house, this guy, and this guy, and they're pieces of shit, and they had no reason to, and I don't like them anymore, and I'm going to tell everybody that what they did, they're obviously terrible at their job. And they cannot sue you successfully for that after the fact, because now you can cite this case. You can say, in the case of Afroman versus Adams County Sheriff, Afroman won because of this, and you can use that in your defense. That's huge. That is massive. That is a big deal. And I love stuff like that. And I'm not saying that just because he won a case against the police. I'm saying any case where you can get precedent on your side is fantastic. This is the kind of stuff that wins cases. You see all these Law and Order shows on TV and all that other kind of stuff, and they do the evidence and they do all. You don't always see where they're looking through the old records for, okay, there was this case, there was this case, and there was this case. These all impact what we're talking about. If we can convince the jury of these three things, we're golden, we're done. And that stuff is so vitally important. It's fascinating. And so I have to commend Afroman for for winning his case. It's a huge step for the people as far as in the landscape of free speech is considered. Now, we've talked about on the show before that free speech doesn't necessarily mean that you're free of consequences of your speech, but you can't be prosecuted for your speech by a government, whether local, state, or federal. Now, that's not going to stop somebody from coming up and beating the crap out of you if you say something about them that they don't like. And it's not always fair if they want to do that, because some people are loose cannons and there's no reason. But you're not free of the consequences. But you are free from being persecuted if you say something like, I think the president's a big sack of shit. There are plenty of governments across the world where if you say that, and they find out, they're coming to your house and they're putting you in a gulag. That's not even a joke. That's not me just making that up. That's what happens in a lot of places in the world. But here in the United States, we have the law against that. We have the First Amendment. And a lot of people assume that you can say whatever you want without consequences, but that's not the case. It means you can say what you want, and the government cannot jail you for saying it. Which is a lot different from you walking around town being a racist and having people of the race that you're racist against get mad and decide to kick your ass. Right? That's understandable. I don't think violence is the answer for most of this stuff, but that's how it is. If you say something that makes you an ignorant douchebag, then somebody's going to take issue, and then they're going to try to stop you. And that's not infringing on your free speech. It isn't. People are going to tell me, like, oh, no, it absolutely is. You don't understand. No, it's not. That's not how free speech works. Free speech specifically is about being jailed by the government or by an authority figure for what you're saying. So, but this is a big step in the right direction for that, because we are dealing with some free speech things at the moment. Right? We are dealing with that kind of stuff. There are things being said in the world that people are getting, here in the United States, they're getting targeted for. Which is unfortunate. Now, are people being arrested by the federal government for them? Not yet. I mean, there's been a lot of people who can claim that, oh yeah, I said this and they came after. No. There's been no official arrests made by this administration for saying, like, if I were to say, for example, and this is not a actual statement for or against. I'm not making this statement as any personal belief. You can believe what you want. If I were to just come out and be like, I think Donald Trump is a big asshole, and I think he touches people inappropriately, and I think he's a fucknut, I can't be arrested for that. And I won't be. Now, I'm not saying I believe that, and I'm not saying I don't believe that. That's just an example. If I said, I think Joe Biden smells little girls, and I think he's a really gross man, I can't be arrested for that either. Right? And it doesn't matter whether it's true or not, and you can argue about things whether they're true or not. I'm not here to... Again, these are just made-up theoretical examples. They're not me saying these factual things about these people. Okay, don't get me wrong. Somebody's going to take this out of context and be like, oh, he said this about Trump, and he said this about Biden, and oh my gosh, he's extremist. No, I'm just... If I were to say something like that, or if anybody were to say anything like that, the First Amendment protects you. Now, some super hardcore Trump fan, if I went out to a Trump rally and I said that, and a big bunch of Trump fans were like, you son of a bitch, and they decided to beat the crap out of me, I could get them all arrested for assault, but I would also have to acknowledge that I instigated that. Because there's no reason to go there and just say that and believe that you're going to be free of the consequences. Somebody's going to get pissed off and they're going to fight you. Same thing for Democrat things. Same thing for everything. You know, it's... Free speech is what it is. But there are consequences. And I'm an absolutist. I think you should be able to say whatever you want, wherever you want. As long as it's not causing direct harm to people, then it doesn't matter. Like, you can't go into... This is the big example that everybody uses as far as, well, you can't be an absolutist because of this. If you yell fire in a crowded theater, obviously there are laws against that because that's incitement, that's causing panic. That's not... You're not getting arrested for your speech. You're getting arrested for the intent of the speech. And there's a fine line there, too. There's a very fine line, because intent can be hard to prove. People are still trying to use that to prove the January 6th Capitol invasion and things of that nature. They're trying to say that, oh, well, obviously Trump incited everybody, and that's the reason we went over there, so he's guilty. And other people say, no, he didn't. These people had a mind of their own, and they heard what they wanted to hear, even though he didn't say it. And so, that's, again, a very fine line. Incitement and the impact of what you're trying to say makes a difference. And it can be hard to prove. But regardless, that's... I'm pleased with the way that the Afroman case ended. I am excited about the precedent that it set. And I want to wait. I would love to see somebody cite that case. Adams County versus Afroman in some future case. I'd love to see how that turns out. Now let's kind of branch off. Afroman, of course, is an advocate for marijuana use recreationally and things of that nature, and I don't have a particular issue with that. Here in Ohio, a law was passed because it was a citizens' initiative. We were able to sign ballots and legalize marijuana for recreational use in the state of Ohio. Okay? Now, it was kind of murky exactly what that meant, but it meant we could have dispensaries, and it meant various things. Now, I don't know the statistics of this. I haven't seen the numbers, so I'm not taking a side with this necessarily, although I kind of am leaning more towards the people than the government on this. Okay? The government made claims that kids and people underage were going into the dispensaries or going into places that were now selling marijuana products like infused candy, edibles, infused drinks, and things of that nature, and they were getting them and consuming them and being underage. That's obviously a no-no. And also that parents were getting these edibles and things, and they were leaving them out around the house where their kids could get them, and their kids were getting into them and then going to school or taking the products to school and giving them to their friends and such. Now, I don't know the statistics of how often, if at all, that kind of stuff happened. I did see a few news stories over the past year or two that said that students at some places were busted for edibles that they'd brought in from home and things like that. So it's not unheard of. It's not something that didn't happen at all. But I don't know how widespread it was. So the state government of Ohio voted to change the law, and now they've outlawed the use in most locations. They've severely limited it of where you can buy infused products and what you need to do to get them. And they've also limited how many plants you can grow in your own home and various other things. They basically went around and they altered the original intent of the legalization to be closer to what it had originally been without outlawing it completely. There was a movement to gather petitions to try to stop that, but they didn't get enough signatures and enough traction in time, so they were not able to block the law, so it's now in place. And while I'm not a person who uses the edibles and the infused drinks and things like that, I'm obviously, like I said, I'm a drinker. I like alcohol. I'm not into marijuana so much. I'm not against it for people as long as they're being responsible with it, which is part of the problem. And this is not me defending alcohol, because plenty of people abuse alcohol. They drive under the influence, they drink too much in public, they cause them problems and things, okay? This is not me defending alcohol in favor, okay? But people, historically, most people that I know who are heavy into marijuana use it constantly. When they're driving, when they're hanging out at home, when they're out and about, when they're at work, they're constantly. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, that's because they can function normally. It's not a big deal." But it is an impairment. It does alter your brain chemistry, at least temporarily. It's not like it's completely. And I'm not saying it's going to kill you. I'm not going to say it's whatever. And I have plenty of people who've said, "Oh, I drive better when I'm high," and I'm not sure I believe that. So I think I don't want to tell people that they can't do it, just like alcohol, but there should be some limits on what you can do in the name of safety. And these are reasonable. These aren't like, it's not like the virus days where, oh, you better get vaccinated to protect everybody around you, because we all know that was bullshit, right? The vaccinations didn't help anybody. I mean, they might have helped, but we don't know. And they didn't protect anybody around anybody else, because you could still pass on the virus, right? That's not misinformation. That's fact. That's what happened. So there's a limit to what I would say I would want anything to be done for the greater good, so to speak. I don't want to force anybody to do too much in the name of the greater good, because that can get to be out of control. You can label all kinds of things a danger to the public in the name of the greater good, because it depends on who's defining the greater good at the time. I just think anything that's going to alter your brain chemistry or your thought processes, or that's going to make you change your moods or feel differently, even if it's antidepressants, sometimes some people need to not be driving on antidepressants. Some people need to be getting rides places because it alters their chemistry to such an extent that they might not be able to notice things when they're driving. Certain mental medications, it's not exclusive to things like marijuana or alcohol or etc. So I think there should be some limits on things, just in the name of common sense. Right? Common sense. And even that, I know some people are going to say, well, your idea of common sense is different from other people's idea of common sense. And maybe that's true. So it's a difficult area to define. I don't think marijuana should be outlawed. I don't think it should be restricted to the point that you can't just go home after a hard day's work. If you want to smoke up a joint, you smoke up a joint. Or you eat an edible, or you do whatever. I don't think anybody should be raiding your home for that. And I think in not too long into the future, all of these things are going to be legalized anyway. It's inevitable. It's just the degree of allowance of, are you allowed to be on marijuana while you're working? Are you allowed to be on marijuana while you're driving? Are you, and that's the same as alcohol. So, again, I think some things are reasonable. I saw something, and I'm not going to say who it was. It was an organization that apparently is local to the state of Ohio. They do promotion, and they do stage shows and work with musicians and various things. But they're also heavy, apparently, into the activist scene. Activism. I was trying to say, I kept thinking I was going to say Activision, which is the game company, and that's totally different. The activism scene in Ohio. And they made a post based because of the law, because now that the law got changed, they weren't able to stop it. And they cited some historical context. Let me see if I screenshot it here. That from the 1960s on to the present, marijuana led to the Controlled Substances Act of 1970. And then they said, in present day 2026, with many states legalizing marijuana, we are seeing a major increase in marijuana-related laws being brought back up, while many people are in prison because of marijuana-related crimes in legal states. And I think that's something we should deal with. We should probably let some of those people off if the law has changed, right? Anyway, their post continues. With marijuana users often being targeted by law enforcement and even more people needing to use hemp for medicinal purposes, and here's the thing, I don't think you need it for medicinal purposes, okay? A lot of people enjoy it and it works well for medicinal purposes, but I don't think you need it. There are many things that you can take. It's important we educate ourselves on laws and how these laws came to be. Marijuana and has always been a tactic to enforce law on immigrants and people of color. So they're saying marijuana use is racial, and that discriminating against marijuana is racist. And in the post that they had this was an image, like a meme basically, that they had all this written out of. In the post, they continued on to say that marijuana use was a human right. Because it was a natural substance, it came from nature, so it's only right for humans to be able to have access to it, which makes it a human right. And I have to disagree with that. There were many political reasons, I'm sure, that marijuana was outlawed. I am 100% sure it was politically motivated. I don't think it was specifically targeted against people of darker skin. I don't think it was specifically targeted against immigrants. I think it was because of the way it changed people's thoughts and minds and how they acted. And anything that alters that is frightening to the federal government. They don't like alcohol either. The only reason alcohol is still allowed is because it makes people dumber. I'm a big fan of alcohol myself, and I have to admit that if you go crazy with it, it dulls your brain cells. It makes you stupid. Overuse of alcohol makes you stupid, and that's why the government allows it to be in place. They have it heavily regulated, but they would rather have people... The government would rather you be stupid than smart. Because if you're stupid, then they can control you. They can manipulate you. They can feed you whatever BS they want to through the mainstream media. And here I'm sounding a little bit like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm not. These are all things that happen. They're real facts. Whether it doesn't even matter what party you're from. It doesn't even matter if you're Republican or Democrat or Independent or whatever. All the major outlets do this. The dumber you are, the more likely you are to vote for a candidate that's not that great, but that says the right things. And alcohol contributes to that. But they also have a lot of heavy penalties if you drive drunk. They know you're going to. They know, not you specifically, but they know that people are going to drive drunk at some point because they think that they're invincible. So they have harsh penalties in place because they're prepared for it. They're prepared for it, and they are ready to put you in prison for it, and to fine you, and to do all these things. And they want to do the same with marijuana. Many people say, oh, marijuana expands your consciousness. It does this, it does that. It also makes you stupid. It does. You can disagree with me all you want. When you're on marijuana, it doesn't matter how profound you feel or what kind of big thoughts you have. You're acting stupid. That's not to tell you not to do it. That's not me saying that you are a stupid person. I'm not saying that about you. I'm saying this as a person who likes alcohol, knowing that alcohol makes me stupid. Marijuana also makes you stupid. Any substance that dulls your reactions, that gets into your head like that, it makes you stupid. It's how it is. It's not me making things up. It's not being insulting. I have been around enough people who were high. I have been high myself. I know for a fact you get stupid. You get stupid. And the government wants to be able to control that because they love stupid people. Because stupid people will do what they want, or sometimes they won't, which is also part of the problem. Stupid people tend to just do things that they think are great and smart in the moment when they aren't, because they're being stupid. Right? Does this make sense? Because it makes perfect sense to me. And that's where we're at. The government doesn't want to just give a free, just straight pass to like, oh yeah, anybody can do marijuana, whatever. It's no big deal. They want to be able to control the level of stupidity in their favor. And that's how things are. That's how things work. But it's not a human right. I'll say that. Marijuana use is not a human right. Just because it comes from nature does not mean that you have every right to go out and just do it just because you're a person and because it's there. The same can be said about poisonous mushrooms, not the psychedelic mushrooms. I'm talking about poisonous mushrooms that kill you. The ones that you take a bite out of and within a few hours you're dead because the poison is that strong. Sure, you can go out and do that, but is it a human right to go eat poisonous mushrooms? I think it's dumb to say that. I think it's dumb to say that. There's nothing stopping you. There's no laws saying don't do it. Does that make it a human right? Does that mean it should be protected by the law that you should be able to go out and eat poisonous, deadly mushrooms? If you take a staple gun to your genitals, is that a human right? There's no law against it. Should there be a law protecting that? Should there be a law protecting it? Because nothing says you can't. It's a human right. You know, it's... And so many people want to... And I've said this before on the show. They want to ascribe miracles to hemp as if it's this is the savior of the world. There's so many things that this can do. And you know, if all of that was accurate, it would have been marketed and it would have been available for sale legally already. Because that's what they would do. Anything that works, they market it so they can sell it. Any good idea that can be turned for a profit will be turned for a profit. And the fact that it hasn't means that it's not the miracle cure that you think it is. Hemp is not the answer to all of life's ills. I'm sure there's a lot of good that can be done with it. It makes a good rope. You know, but you're just trying to excuse the fact that you want to get high. That's all you're doing. You're just trying to look for a reason to get high without anyone telling you it's wrong, without anyone telling you that it's a problem. You're not taking it for cancer. You're not taking it for whatever disease. You're taking it because it gets you high and it lets you ignore all of those other symptoms. It's not curing those symptoms. It's helping you ignore those symptoms. And you can come at me with all these studies and all this and all that, and I can equally find studies to the opposite. It's a game that nobody can win. You can't win, I can't win. It's just how it is. But I still believe 100% that if you want to smoke marijuana, you can smoke marijuana. I'm on your side, regardless of everything that you might think from what I've been saying. I am on your side. I don't think it's a human right, and I don't think it's the magical cure-all of every disease known to man. But if you want to use it, I don't have a problem with that. I think you should. I think you should be able to. And I think you should be able to without consequence, as long as you're not going to get super high, get in a car, and then forget what you're doing, and then plow into something. And you can say, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, okay. That doesn't mean it's not impossible. Okay, that's all I'm saying. I just ask people to be responsible. I sit and I drink here at home. I don't go out driving. I don't go bar hopping. I drink here at home, where I can monitor what I'm drinking. And I know there are people out there who can't, that will just drink and drink and drink at home and then destroy their families and whatnot. I get it. But people will do that with all kinds of drugs, with all kinds of substances. So that's where we're at. I don't believe that marijuana is a human right. And I don't think the laws that are going into place are specifically meant to target people of darker skin and immigrants. I don't believe that the restriction on marijuana is racially motivated. I don't believe that. Believe it or not, there are a lot of things that happen in politics that are not racially motivated. I mean, I know it's popular right now to assume that racism drives everything. But it doesn't. It doesn't. Not unless you want it to, in which case you're going to believe it does, and you're going to perpetuate that falsehood. And that means it's true for you, and that's true for anybody that you associate with, and that's true for your children, and that's true for any generation afterwards. And that's perpetuating a cycle that does not need to continue. Change starts with you. If you want to end racism, then you have to start with yourself. And you have to stop looking at, well, these white people, these brown people, these whatever. You just stop thinking about it that way. Stop looking at people of these different skin colors as different people and just look at them as, hey, these are all people. They just happen to have different appearances to me. But other than that, they're all people. Stop calling people. Stop labeling people by their skin color. Stop doing that. Stop labeling yourself by that skin color. Every time I hear somebody say, I'm just a basic white girl, oh, it just gets to me. I hate it. You're perpetuating racism. I'm not saying you're being actively racist towards yourself or anybody else, but you're perpetuating the idea that your skin color makes you different. Stop. Stop it. When fall comes around and the pumpkin spice lattes show up, people are like, oh, this basic white girl stuff. No, don't. Don't. Stop. Don't even think it. Don't say it. Stop. Black is beautiful. Stop. Don't. Don't say it. Yes, I'm sure you are beautiful, but it has nothing to do with your skin color. It has everything to do with you as a person, as a human being. Stop drawing the lines between each other. Stop. Just quit it. I hate it. Like, I can't stand it. But that's it. We're getting towards the end of the show here. This was an interesting one. This was we got into some topics, and I'm sure I'm going to get some people who are going to be upset, who are going to disagree. And by all means, you can tell me. Don't yell at me about it. Don't call me names about it. But just in a constructive fashion, just be like, you know what? I don't agree with you on this point, and this is why. And I'll listen to your argument. I will read it. It may not change my mind, but I will consider it, and I will appreciate the fact that you reached out in such a fashion. I will respect you. I will respect the opinion that you set forth. And that's where these things start. They start with respect. And I would like to respect you. And I would like you to respect me. That's all I'm asking. That's all I ever ask from anybody. Bit of basic respect. But anyway, that's it. We're all done for the night. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. I'll figure it out. I'm sure some other great, nice, hot topic will pop up out of the ether and present itself. Until then, of course, thank you for listening. Have a good night.